Campaign, France, 2008. Victor Ville was a brusque and wide-bodied businessman and the founder of Ville Industries. VI was a chemical company that dealt with all things from cosmetic creams to pharmaceuticals. They were also a notorious company of ill repute. Victor was a very successful businessman and a multimillionaire, but it was well known that Ville was a cutthroat tycoon and that he even had connections with the criminal underground. He was patrolling his chemical plant ahead of a federal inspection to make sure to cover the tracks of any unsafe work practices. Victor and his yes-men moved along the metal walkway, over vats of chemicals and rolling assembly lines when Victor heard a cacophony of barking. "What is that awful noise?" he groaned. Yes, sir, those would be our test subjects. You see, we've discovered a gland in the canine brain that dash. Get on with it, Victor demanded. Why, yes, sir. In short, we can synthesize a crucial and very expensive extract with dog glands. Expensive, eh? That's right, sir. Liquidate them. Sir, you heard me. Kill the dogs and get them out of here. The inspector will be here tomorrow, and they're an obvious violation of the health code. But, sir, the tests are almost complete. Victor grabbed the bespectacled geek by the tie and pulled him close to his face. Victor had a very stern look on his face. His long face was covered with black hair and white sideburns, and his arched nose had a pencil-thin mustache that was inked on just above his nasty sneer. Then here's your ultimatum. This project is gone by tomorrow, or else I'll have your ass. Tell the project director to finish it tonight, or abandon the project entirely. Yes, sir. Then Victor shoved his lackey away and carried on. The lackey immediately scrambled off to find the project director, Cécile Ville. Cécile was Victor's daughter from his fourth ex-wife. She was only 26 years old, one of Victor's youngest children, and already she shared much in common with her father. She was cunning, extremely competitive, cutthroat in her dealings with others, arrogant and selfish. She was also very beautiful, and exotic, looked like she could be a supermodel. She had some experience modeling in her teenage years and early 20s, but had yet to take the plunge as a full-time career. She had grown ample features as she matured, but most striking of all was her long black hair that was half white on the left side of her head. There was no doubt that the ruthless and snotty Cécile Ville took after her father. That was why Cécile was her father's favorite. But, of course, there were many things that set them apart. First of all, Cécile was very lazy and spoiled rotten. Although she didn't see her father much during her childhood, he doted on her like his little princess whenever he did. As a result, Cécile grew up terrorizing her household servants and throwing tantrums in her youth. When she turned 18, she moved to downtown Paris, where her father bought her a luxury penthouse and a degree from the finest university in all of France. In addition, Victor offered his daughter a spot as a project manager within Ville Industries. This nepotism, combined with her arrogance, laziness, and abusive behavior, earned her the ire of the entire company. All the workers called her Daddy's little monster. Behind her back, of course. If anybody dared to say a nasty word to Cécile, they would get 2 earfuls. One from the CEO and one from Cécile herself. The lackey burst into Cécile's office and found her clad in a towel with her hair wrapped up to dry. She had clearly stepped out of her office's shower and now had her bare feet up on her desk, drying her painted toenails. "What is wrong with you?" she screamed. "Don't you even knock." "I'm sorry, Cécile, but dash." "Madam," she barked. How dare an underling so beneath herself speak to her as if they were equals? "Why, yes, of course, madam." "Now what do you want, Raoul?" "It's about your project, Madam Dash." "Is it finished?" she interrupted. "Not quite, madam. You see, your father wants it disbanded tonight." "What?" "I'm sorry, miss, but the inspectors will be here tomorrow, and it looks like dash." "You idiot! How is the project not finished yet? It's going to save this company millions. Those useless scientists are slacking again, aren't they?" "No, madam, no. They're working around the clock. We just don't have enough extracts, you see." "Extracts? You mean mutts?" "Exactly, miss. Without the proper amount of dash. So, go get one." Well, it's not a matter of simply doing. You see, we've emptied out the local pound, and the dog catchers haven't dash. Raoul ducked under a vase that Cecile threw at him. The vase smashed against the door, flinging shards all over the office. Get out, she screamed. Don't pull Z plug on Z project just yet. I'll have zings ready by midnight. But, madam. Cecile stood up and pointed to the door. I said get out.
Fwup.
Feeling a sudden draft, Cecile looked down and discovered that her towel had fallen off, leaving her but naked in front of Raoul. She was quick to cover up her private parts and shot him a nasty look. Raoul, who was staring with an open mouth, shut it quickly and scampered out of the office, closing the door behind him. Cecile put her towel back on and sat back in her cushy office chair. Luckily, it was only past noon, which meant that she had all day to find some mutt to complete the project. What a worthless bunch of lackeys she had been assigned. Clearly, this was her father's way of testing her competence. Well, fortunately for him, the cutthroat tenacity of the Villéin family coursed through her cold blood. So, she put on her clothes and took to the streets. Part 2. Finding a dog would be one thing in Paris, but the town of Campagne was out in the middle of nowhere. Why her father had decided to set up shop in this nasty backwater countryside, Cecile would never understand. This town was completely empty. Nothing but wide acres of rolling hills and countryside without a boutique or five-star restaurant in sight. But what was worse was that the population was sparse, and the houses were so far spread apart. It made her sick, but she had to get a move on in order to find what she was looking for. Fortunately for her, there was a little farm not far down the road that seemed to be teeming with animals. On that farm lived Ma and Pa Pusquier, an elderly couple of French country folk who were being visited by their sweet little granddaughter Maurice. Maurice was a mischievous and clever 8-year-old girl who loved animals and would often spend most of her time in her grandparents' barn. The perfect target. And as luck would have it, the Pusquiers were pulling out of their driveway in their truck just as Cecile caught sight of their farm up the road. Cecile didn't know if there were any dogs at the farm, but that wouldn't stop her from going to take a look. So, she snuck up to the house, peeked into the windows, and discovered that nobody was home. So, Cecile hopped over the wooden fence and made her way towards the barn. Inside the barn, the Maurice Pusquier was watching. An intruder, she announced to the animals. She looks like she's up to no good. Maurice went to hide on the barn's second story and watch how things played out. Her grandparents' barnyard dog, Rex, went to hide somewhere separately. Cecile stood as a silhouette superimposed in the wooden frame as she threw open the barn doors. There was a wide variety of animals, all contained within separate pens: goats, pigs, sheep, horses, and even cows. Surely there had to be a dog around here, somewhere. That's when she heard a whimpering sound. Cecile heard it come from a small table, so she bent over to take a peek beneath it. Down under the table was Rex. "Aha!" Cecile exclaimed. "Come to Mama, Mario."
Poink.
Cecile's eyes went wide as she quickly stood up, banging her head on the table in the process. Murd. She cursed beneath her breath and rubbed the back of her head, which felt like it now had a sizable lump on it. But she couldn't worry about the pain on her head for too long because her butt was being ravaged by the claws of a nasty orange cat. "Get off of me," Cecile cried as she fought with the nasty cat. Grabbing the furry little beast by the torso, she managed to pull it off the seat of her pants and sent it flying across the barn, screaming as it landed on top of one of the pen's gates. Cecile in pain winced as she felt the claw marks, which had scratched through the seat of her pants. "Damn cat," she grumbled. "Now Zen, where was I?" Bending back down, she was surprised to see the dog come scampering out from underneath the table and between her legs. She looked down between her legs and saw the dog run into an open animal pen. Was that pen always opened? She wondered to herself. No matter. She went into the pen and found the dog wagging its tail and looking up at her. "There you are. Now I've got you right where I want you."
Chomp.
Feeling a sudden pull and consequent draft, Cecile looked back to discover that a goat was standing behind her, chewing on the seat of her pants. "Why, you little dash."
Chomp.
Looking behind her, she saw that the old dog was hanging off of her, but by his bared fangs. She wiggled her butt from side to side, hoping to shake the little beast, but the dog wouldn't budge. So, she ran out of the pen, swinging and swaying her rear about when she thought of an idea. She ran over to one of the closed horse pens on the far side of the barn and threw her hips back to crush the dog's head between her butt and the gate. Seeing this coming, the mutt released his bite and fell down between Cecile's legs as she staggered back through the busted gate. She landed flat on her back. Looking up to the high barn ceiling, Cecile couldn't see Maurice standing on the rafter overhead, but she could see the falling metal bucket that had been dropped.
Clang.
The bucket landed right on Cecile's face and put a ringing in her ear that stayed long after her spinning vision returned to normal. Sitting upright, Cecile staggered to her feet and wobbled back and forth. To keep herself from falling over, Cecile put her hands flat on the posts of the pen and stabilized herself. Little did she know she was setting herself up for failure. The mighty stallion, whose pen she had crashed through, turned around and gave her a powerful kick right on her rear. The kick was so strong that it sent Cecile flying across the barn, smashing headfirst through the door and skidding out into the mud. Cecile's eyes were spinning around her skull so fast that the world seemed to be swirling all around her. She was lying flat on her chin with her butt high up in the air, her pants torn at the seat, creating a little window for her frilly purple panties to show through. "Sick her, Rex," Maurice commanded. The old mongrel ran up behind Cecile at top speeds and lunged at her rear with his fangs bared once more.
Chomp.
Oh. Cecile cried as the dog sank his teeth into her meaty rump. Then, the dog leapt off her rear with her underwear still in his mouth and began to walk backwards, pulling Cecile's underwear back to expose her bare butt. "Just a little further," Maurice said to herself. "Further now." Aiming her slingshot out of the barn window, she fired a rock at the hornet's nest that hung above the barn door. The rock struck the nest, caused it to wobble and eventually fall from its lofty height, directly into the seat of Cecile's underwear. That's when Rex released the evil woman's undies and let the waistband slap back against her rear, securing the hornet's nest in place. Cecile felt an unsettling softness crush against her rump. She didn't understand what had happened, but for a split second, she was happy that she was no longer being bitten by that nasty mutt. Realization struck her the moment the hornets began to buzz up a storm. That's when the stinging began.
Poink.
Yo. Cecile cried as she leapt to her feet. Not fully understanding her situation, she began to run away, but, alas, the pain followed her everywhere she went.
Poink. Yow. Poink. Yow. Poink. Yow.
So, Cecile ran away at top speeds, leaving a trail of dust and hornets behind her as she vanished over the hill. Cecile had managed to ditch the hornets and the mud that covered her by jumping into a stream. In order to avoid the hornets, who were still very angry about their hive, she decided to swim several miles until she came to a small town. This little boondock was known as Petiteville. Sopping wet and sore as hell, she emerged from the stream smelling like pond water and covered in lily pads. Luckily for her, there was an old, stray dog drinking from the stream where she had washed up, so Cecile quickly ran over to the old dog and grabbed it by the neck. "I've got one," she exclaimed. Hours later, Cecile returned to her father's lab. She was now completely dry, but still looked as uncouth as before. Her butt was sore and pulsating in agony, and all she wanted to do was sit on an ice pack, but first she had a filthy mutt to deliver. Bursting into the laboratory triumphantly, Cecile announced her return and that she had brought the final mutt to finish up VEI's greatest project yet. Little did she know, her father was standing right there, surrounded by federal inspectors. Victor Villeen had a very angry and very disappointed look upon his face when the inspectors turned to him for answers. "What is the meaning of this?" one of them asked. "Why is there an animal in this facility? This is not a testing lab. Who is this woman? Is she an employee?" Cecile blinked her eyes, dumbfounded, and looked over to Raoul. "Raoul," she yelled, "what is the meaning of this?" Raoul wiped his glasses clean. "The inspectors decided to surprise us before we clocked out. Turns out they had an opening in their schedule." Victor Ville stomped over to Cecile, snatched the dog out of her hands, and handed it to Raoul. "Get this creature out of my sight," he sneered. "I will deal with my daughter." Raoul looked at the old dog, smiled, and said, "I think I'll name you Scruffy." Victor grabbed Cecile by the wrist and dragged her, kicking and screaming, into his office. "Wait, Daddy. It was a misunderstanding. You have to believe me. It was supposed to make us millions." Victor slammed the door behind him and bent Cecile over his knee. "Foolish girl.
Spank.
You've ruined me.
Spank.
Now you'll get the discipline I should have given you as a child."
Spank.
"Daddy, I know." Then Victor undid Cecile's belt, pulled her pants all the way down, exposing her bare legs and purple underwear, and began to lashing the naughty girl with her own belt. Cecile screamed and cried, kicking her legs, which were restrained by the pants down around her ankles, as her father gave her the spanking of a lifetime. All the while, the employees of VI watched from the glass window behind them.